The first Penn State football commit of spring is here. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. Sean Fitz, our reporter for Penn State football recruiting, here to tell you about the latest Nittany Lion going back to a certain well on the western side of the state that's becoming very good for the Nittany Lions. Of course, you read the title of this video. You know who it is, but Fitz, it's always nice to give the official introduction of the latest Penn State recruit. So welcome. Thank you for doing this. And who is the newest Nittany Lion for Penn State football recruiting in 2026?
You're right, T. Frank. It is always nice to do one of these videos. I think we told you we weren't coming to you midweek because of practice, but hey, we're here. Surprise. For a good surprise. David Davis, Imani Christian Academy athlete from Pittsburgh, class of 2026. This guy's been on the radar for Penn State for a long, long time. First commitment for the Nittany Lions since Julian Peterson back in junior day in January. And it's a pickup for Penn State in the four-star realm, according to the industry ranking and the On3 rankings. Number 299 overall by On3, number 16 athlete nationally, number 9 in Pennsylvania. Those numbers pretty close in the industry: 346, 19, and 9. The athlete tab is looming large here because this is an athlete that we got him at 5'11". Actually, we're going to change that profile, but 5'11", 185 is where we have him. Has projected a couple different places during his recruitment. He originally came onto the scene as a running back. He was ranked pretty highly as a running back indeed. But I think as time went along, you start to separate between running backs and between the high school running back prospects. And now I kind of see him on the defensive side of the ball. We talk corner, we talk safety, but I think the athlete tab is pretty apt here. We throw it around in general for some people sometimes, but I think it works with Davis because he does a little bit of everything on the field, especially on special teams. So an interesting pickup for Penn State here in the sense it's an in-state guy. They've been very, very good in Western Pennsylvania, and looks like Terry Smith continues to do the job down there around the Pittsburgh area.
Yeah, this is a fun film. Normally I get to it on the back half of one of these, but I just wanted to show these. He's athlete in a lot of different ways in terms of also, I think, playmaking ability. So you look at a guy who has a variety of skill sets: safety, corner, running back, receiver. He does it all on film: kick return, punt return. But some of the things you wouldn't coach a guy to do, like that very first highlight of pretending the ball is dead, picking it up and running. I don't know that I want him doing that going forward, but the instincts to make plays, I think, are a big thing in David Davis's, skill set. So it's just interesting how this all comes together from a guy who has been on the radar for a long time. We were following him as a sophomore. How have you seen that all develop? I know you mentioned like starting at running back, but just what do you take from his timeline from early prospect to what he is now? How many guys have you seen kind of go down this development path?
Well, he burst onto the scene before his sophomore year, ran a 4.4 for the Penn State staff at camp. Really looked impressive there, and Penn State was going to continue to, or they offered him, and they were going to continue to watch him. He ended up having what we would call an upper quadrant injury. It was either a shoulder or an elbow, depending on who you ask. But he missed a decent amount of his junior season. And because of that, the Imani Christian staff, and I actually think this is a credit to them, used him in different ways to keep him sort of out of harm's way. And that's when he really blew up as a kick returner, punt returner, a guy that can just find space, get to that space, and then exploit that space, really. I think that's kind of when the transition happened. You look at his size, and it's not bad. I mean, he is 5'11", like we've got him verified at 5'11", and 185. So does that mean he puts on the weight to be a safety? Does that mean and I say that a little bit in jest, but does that mean he ends up at corner? He's a guy that can eventually play running back. I don't know what his best spot is. And that's kind of the ambiguity there is probably why, it wasn't as hotly contested as I think a lot of people thought coming out of his sophomore season. So, but you go back to the tape, and heck of a football player that can naturally find space and really turn it upfield and go. The defensive highlights are not as ample. Like there's just not a ton out there. He does it well. But it's just like, I think the kind of the focus here was getting it out there and saying, this guy's is a playmaker, and let's get the ball in his hands and let's show everybody that we can do something with the ball in his hands. So continue to evaluate from that aspect. But if he's going to find a spot in Penn State secondary, the odds are he can probably play.
Yeah, and I think that you mentioned the fact that the injury probably has something to do with that on the defensive side of the ball, not being able to tackle or be, more physical, even as a runner, like playing in space is what he did this past year. And it's pretty impressive that a guy who is injured can then go play in space, kind of pivot your role and still be a big contributor on that offense. So, kind of an unheralded guy. It's funny the way it shifted from this is somebody that I know Ryan especially was talking about this time last year. It's like, keep an eye on David Davis, somebody that we need to know about. And even during Deshaun Burnett, former teammate who's now a Nittany Lion in the class of 2025, when we were talking about him, a name that came up very quickly was David Davis. So do you think, even as a 4-star, do you think there's more tangible upside on the other side of that injury? Is it TBD? In terms of an athlete tag tends to have guys get kind of lost in the shuffle of what position are you? And then if you're not one of the very best athletes in the country, a 6'3" guy that runs a 4.3, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, maybe sometimes you get shuffled down the board a little bit. So how do you view the upside of this particular commitment in light of all of that stuff?
Yeah, I think there's athletes that are rated as athletes because they are just flat out, those guys that can go out and be essentially by the definition more athletic than everybody, but maybe don't fit into that sort of mold of a certain position. I think Davis is in there. I mean, the 4.4 before his sophomore year, that's an eye catcher right there because number one, very early in his career, and number two, it's actually pretty well verified here. So it makes a lot of sense why that comes along as an athletic projection. But yeah, you played a place like Amani, who has really run over some people in the last couple of years. And then all of a sudden, it's like, how much do you need him to do? And how much do you put him with that injury before his sophomore year? How much do you put him in harm's way? So I think that's kind of what you get out of it. And I think probably one of the things to look at here is Penn State's pretty pleased with Deshaun Burnett since he got to campus. And I think that you look at how you develop your guys from the high school level to the college level. And if those guys start to pop as they turn that corner to the college level, then all of a sudden, maybe that's a trend that you have coming out of that school. So you look at Amani Christian, you see David Davis, you see Gabriel Jenkins in the class of 2027, and you think these guys, if you can get late developers and risers at the end of the cycle, yeah, that makes sense there. So Deshaun Burnett was one of those last cycle, and since he's gotten to Penn State, he's done some pretty nice things. So I look at that, and I look at the developmental track of guys coming out of that school, and you got to feel good about it. So that's the kind of the, I don't want to call it the benefit of the doubt situation with Davis because he doesn't have a set position, but at the same time, like if you like what you've seen in that sort of realm, it makes sense to take him right now.
Yeah, and you actually just jogged something in my memory, which is pretty apparent, and that Deshaun Burnett also was kind of a tweener, a guy that was a linebacker. Maybe he's a defensive end and kept developing. I know we saw him at 7-on-7 last year, and he was just the most freaky athlete on the football field with a lot of teams out there. So, that development and that physical development, kind of like you talk about Pittsburgh Central Catholic kids coming out as mature. I don't know that, is Amani Christian developing kind of that developmental reputation as well on this? Is that kind of what you're saying of it's not just that they're going to be good football players and they're going to, have good athletes, but they're going to be developed the right way and continue to develop as they get closer to the college level?
With growth to come. I mean, we have the same conversation on the east side of the state with St. Joe's Prep and Imhotep. You've got guys that are the raw talent at one school, and then the guys that are a little bit more refined. And, Penn State loves what they've gotten from Pittsburgh Central Catholic, but you can also love what you get on the other end of the spectrum of the raw guys from a place like Amani Christian. And, Evolve out there, 2/10. Dwayne Brown does an amazing job with the training and stuff out there. So all these guys are sort of interconnected in one way or the other. But at the same time, there's different developmental tracks. And you've got Deshaun Burnett, you've got Davis here. And then I mentioned Gabe Jenkins is going to visit this week as well. He's listed as a corner here, as a 4-star corner. And we believe he's being recruited as a linebacker by Penn State. So we're just skipping right over safety for Gabe Jenkins. So that's kind of what you're looking at with there. And I think there's raw to be there's raw materials to be mined there from these prospects that are coming out of I hate to call it less refined because it's just a different style of production. It's a different style of training. It's a different style of all this. But Pittsburgh's really stepped up its game. I mentioned Evolve. I mean, they've done a phenomenal job with developing these guys and with getting them the right type of training for what they're going to see at the next level. I know Aaron Donald's involved with some of that stuff. I mean, it's just like, I don't want to call it night and day, but it's come a long way in the last decade with the training, with those guys being ready. And it coincides really with Penn State's rise in Western Pennsylvania. They've been able to get most of the guys that they've wanted from Western Pennsylvania, and in the process, Pitt has kind of gone the other way, and it's just been really interesting to watch.
I'm going to bypass the mining raw ore from the Pittsburgh area joke to get to the last question I have for
Everybody
you here,
appreciates that. Yeah.
which is, the numbers and how this decision, the athlete tag, shakes out in the class of 2026. Still very early, not a ton of commitments in terms of how many there will be in the end. But you mentioned Julian Peterson committed to the program, Matt Sieg committed at safety. If we're seeing him primarily as that defensive athlete, but also having the ability maybe to develop into an offensive athlete, maybe running back or receiver, Penn State has players at each of those positions. So how does this massage the numbers for you when you're looking at the roster? Where are you kind of placing this in the grand scheme of things, and where can Penn State potentially double dip if he, depending on where you think he's going to end up?
Yeah, and that the Davis commit would put Penn State back to 9 commitments in the class of 2026. So roughly a third of the way there. But I will say, and I've said this on the recruiting show before, there's just more flexibility in the class of 2026. If the House settlement is pushing us to, and I'm not saying it's absolutely going to be 105, but if it's going to push you to 105 scholarships, you've got space. So take the numbers that you thought you were going to get for every position and add one. And sometimes you'll fill that spot, sometimes you won't. And I think you've got a situation here where there's a bunch of safeties coming in to visit. There's a bunch of guys on the board. Joey O'Brien, obviously, I think probably the top guy there, but you've got an opportunity to pull in an athlete that's in your state, and you don't want to be sitting there in August and all of a sudden this kid is off the board and you don't have the option to bring him back around. So I think you saw that a little bit in 2025, and I think Penn State's trying to maybe avoid that situation here, pick up a reputed athlete in state, and it certainly can't hurt. So Penn State now has sorry, I've got this thing in the front. 4 commitments in the state of Pennsylvania in the class of 2026, and it's a pretty good one. Kevin Brown, Messiah Mickens, of course. Mickens still looking at other options, and then Matt Sieg as well to join David Davis. So pretty darn good start in the class of 2026 in Pennsylvania for Penn State.
I always forget to do this because we get right into this stuff. We want to give you as much information as possible. But if you're still here and you haven't yet, please like the video, subscribe to Blue White Illustrated here on the YouTube channel. All kinds of great stuff because spring football is here. We'll have highlights. We'll have James Franklin press conferences each week. We will have, obviously, our live shows and any other commitments that break. But if you want to get the news first, you want to get inside of what's going on with Penn State football recruiting, subscribe right now to Blue White Illustrated for just $1. You'll get a week of access to try us out. You'll be automatically enrolled in the year after that. You can decide in that week if you want to stay with us. I'm fairly confident that if you do that, if you join us for a week, you're going to want more and more and more because we have some of the best coverage from guys like Fitz, Ryan Snyder, who get into this stuff and get you all the details you need to know about Penn State football recruiting. Fitz, excellent job as always. Thanks for being here. Anything you're keeping your eye on, you can say no and we can get out of here. I don't want to put you on the spot, but is it, just generally when it comes to recruiting this time of year, is there anything you want to leave fans with on the way out the door?
I'm keeping my eye on Ryan Snyder's updates because he has been putting out some ridiculous visitor lists, not just Penn State, but all over the place. But it's going to be a busy spring from here on out. It was fun. It was funny. We talked about Penn State sort of getting a late start on the spring practice. Now all of a sudden you've got a commitment on the first day. So slow down, Penn State. You're moving too fast here. But no, definitely check out BlueWhiteIllustrated.com for the recruiting coverage, but also the spring practice coverage. And I think nobody covers Penn State football like we do. So definitely check us out. Check us out on the projections. Check us out on the camp reports and things like that. I think you'll be happy if you have not been around those parts before us. But yeah, thanks to those that are and those that subscribe and those that read. I know a lot of you have expressed your positivity and happiness with the coverage, and we hope to continue to provide that. So thanks to those people. And if you haven't jumped on board yet, now's a good time.
David Davis is a Nittany Lion. That'll do it now for this committed video. More on the way, guaranteed. We don't know when, but when it does happen, we'll be here with that information from Ryan Snyder and from Sean Fitz, our recruiting reporters at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. We'll talk to you the next time news breaks.